Hi, my name is Marc Yamada. I teach Japanese literature at Brigham Young University, and I'm introducing the film Grave of the Fireflies by Isao Takahata. Isao Takahata is associated with the Ghibli animation studio in Japan. And of course, Ghibli is famous for the work of Hayao Miyazaki, works like My Neighbor Totoro and Spirited Away. And actually, the Grave of the Fireflies was produced and released with Totoro in 1988 as kind of a companion piece, but wasn't as well received as Totoro, due largely to the more somber tones of the film. The film tells the story of Seita, a young boy who struggles to take care of his younger sister Setsuko after the two have been orphaned in the closing days of World War II. Like other works of literature and film that examine the war or wars, Grave of the Fireflies in many ways is an indictment or a criticism of dehumanizing effects of war, the dehumanizing influences of the policies of ultranationalism, especially in Japan's case. Many felt that these policies of ultranationalism neglected the individual, neglected the needs of the individual, in many ways objectified the individual. And so we see in the beginning of the film Seita sitting in a crowded train station and kind of hunched over, and essentially he's being treated as trash. He's being neglected. He's being treated as a disgrace for a nation, for a proud nation that's trying to move beyond the war and prepare for the American occupation. And so in some ways, I think this film is trying to pay more close attention to the human story of the war. The one thing I noticed about this film when I first saw it is how little context it gives us about the war itself. We're not giving an official timeline of events or things like that. In many ways, it seems like the events, or the larger events of the war, don't really matter to the film. It's more the personal story that it's trying to tell. It's trying to tell the story of Seita. And it's able to draw us into Seita's story by using shots and perspectives that really kind of give us an understanding of his point of view, that limit us to his point of view. In many ways, we're confined to what Seita is able to see and what Seita is able to know. So we experience the chaos and the violence the same way that Seita does. We hear the blaring air raid sirens that periodically happen throughout the film, and we're shocked by them and surprised them the same way that Seita is. When the firebombs begin to fall from the sky, we see the firebombs from his position, from his perspective, and we have to navigate the destruction in the fiery streets in order to find our way to safety with him. So using this kind of closer narrative perspective and limited narrative perspective really gives us an understanding of his personal experience, his personal story. Grave of the Fireflies is able to pull us into Seita's world by showing us the minute details of his experience, of his and Setsuko's experience. Little details like the way that a small crab will scamper across a sandy beach in the background, or the way that a piece of candy will stick to the candy tin until it's shaken loose. These little details are what characterize a lot of the Ghibli films. We see this a lot in films like Totoro, and it creates a certain kind of childlike fascination with the world. And I think it works the same way in Grave of the Fireflies, creating this kind of childlike fascination, but it also, in many ways, pulls us into Seita's story because it gives us an idea of, in many ways, the texture of his world, really the human texture of his world. It helps us understand his world and the experiences of it. And as we're pulled into his world, as we're pulled into his story, we associate with him more and more, and we understand his alienation. We associate with him as he's becoming more alienated from family members and from the national war effort. In the end, of course, the war does end. Japan surrenders, but these things are kind of in passing. We find out about these things in passing. In a sense, it really doesn't matter who wins the war or what the end is, because really the story is about Seita's story. It's about the tragic events and the events of his life.